Welcome to Active Aging. My name is Sarah Ward, and I work for Allegheny County Area Agency on Aging, where I serve as the Family Caregiver Support Program Administrator. Joining me today are three other women to have a conversation about caregiving. During the last episode, we learned Debbie's story on her experience as a caregiver, and we also heard about some of the supports available to caregivers of dementia, including the Alzheimer's Association and ValleyCare, an adult day service program. Let's do introductions.
My name is Debbie Hostetler, and I am the site manager of the Moon Township Adult Day Services, but today I'm not wearing that hat. I'm here as a past caregiver, and I also am a facilitator for a caregivers meeting once a month in our facility.
My name is Lois Lutz. I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator for the Alzheimer's Association Greater Pennsylvania Chapter.
My name is Wanda Carter, and I'm the site manager at ValleyCare Adult Day Services in Ambridge. ValleyCare Association offers several other programs. We have two centers, the one in Ambridge and also one in Moon Township. And we also offer a Home Safe Home program.
Thank you.
Welcome.
In today's episode, we're going to talk about the importance of caring for the caregiver. So often when the caregiving situation occurs, there is the focus on the care receiver. That would be your loved one who is aging. But today we're going to focus on the caregiver and the importance of self-care. There are actually some very alarming statistics for caregiver health, including that when the day you become a caregiver, you actually age 10 years, which is, to me, unbelievable.
Wow.
63% of the caregivers, remember most of whom are female, report poor eating habits, and 40 to 70% exhibit at minimum the symptoms of depression, if not have full-blown depression. And Lois, during the break, you shared another alarming statistic. What was that?
40% of caregivers pass away before the person they're caring for.
That's very alarming. So today's episode is extremely important for all caregivers out there. So let's take a moment and hear from Debbie, your story of being a caregiver for your mom. Could you share that again with us?
I would love to. It was a very rough time in my life. My mother started with COPD, which is a lung disease, problems. Your lungs just keep getting harder and harder, so it was harder for her to breathe. She also has Parkinson's, and she ended up with dementia. So it had a huge impact on my life, both on a professional basis. I went from a corporate position with Pepperidge Farm to being unemployed from a bank because I had to go home to take care of my mother. So it was a major impact on myself as well as my health. I was very healthy when this all started. At one point I did have a heart attack, and it was at the time that we were getting my mother's possessions ready to be sold at a house sale, and it was just, I guess, more than I could deal with. So it's a very stressful position.
Very often I hear the story from other caregivers in Allegheny County, how caregiving becomes the new norm for them. They're no longer scrapbooking, knitting, or doing any other hobby that was very common for them. They don't attend their church or other religious services as often as they would like to. They stop going out with family and friends, and they start focusing solely on the care receiver, their loved one. So could you talk a little bit about some of the favorite things you like to do before you became a caregiver and how that changed?
I rode a motorcycle. That was when computers were first coming into their own, and I spent a lot of time learning to program the computers, and loved being outside, working in the garden, and lost time to, there was no time to do any of those anymore.
And when you started caring for Mom, did you have time for yourself?
No.
Did you try?
You know what? I did, but even when you weren't there, every time the phone rings, it's like, oh, what's wrong with Mom? And if it rang in the middle of the night, even a wrong number, I mean, you were having a breakdown by the time you got to the phone, because it's like, it's the middle of the night, something bad has happened. So, I mean, you're just 24 hours a day, you're antsy.
And I have a few more questions. I hope you don't mind.
Nope.
They're a little prying, but 3 square meals a day?
Oh, never. Never.
How many hours of sleep were you getting?
Probably 4, because the nights that I was on night turn, we split the duties. I couldn't sleep because every time my mother would roll over, is she all right? Having the COPD, she coughed a lot, so, you'd run in and check on her, lay back down and you're back in. I remember one night when she said, would you please let me sleep and stay out there? But, you kind of, it was like sleeping with one foot on the floor all the time just in case they needed you. Probably did the best of my sleeping sitting there watching TV with her sleeping in the chair, and, which wasn't good for either one of us. She should have been doing something more active, and we shouldn't have been watching TV.
I often hear many caregivers saying that whenever their loved one is sleeping, to me, I would think, oh, that would be an ideal time to sleep. But when you're the caregiver, that's the ideal time to get things done.
Exactly. That's
Does that
when I
sound
would clean
familiar?
her, whichever one of us was there would clean the house for her, get some meals started, call if you had personal calls you needed to get made, do it at that point. There was just never enough time.
This is really a great example of the importance of respite services and adult day services in our community. And Wanda, could you share with us about what ValleyCare does for caregivers such as Debbie?
Well, first of all, any of our caregivers that come to the caregivers that bring their clients to the center, they can take respite. The respite care, if the family wants to go away for like the weekend, they can put them into respite care. That gives them time for themselves, a break, less stress.
One day I never knew what respite care was when I was an early caregiver. Can you explain that?
Okay. Respite care, if you're funded through the county, there's different programs. And if you're under like the PDA waiver program, they can go into like a nursing home for like the weekend. And that's taken care of through the funding through the Office on Aging. The families can go away. They can go away for like a couple of days. They don't have to worry about the family member. They're in the nursing home, meals, 3 meals a day, probably snack.
Medication, of
Medication, yes, so they can go away and not worry. They just need to take time for themselves to keep themselves healthy.
I think it's important too that caregivers realize they are permitted to go away.
Correct.
They are allowed to take a vacation. They should take a vacation. They really need that.
Well, I know as a caregiver myself, I felt guilty if I wasn't there.
Sure.
When I was still working, I remember you felt guilty if you were at work because you weren't at home, and if you were home, you felt guilty because I should probably be at work. And then when we were at my mother's, it was like, well, now I feel guilty because I should be at home with my husband, and I'm here. So you walk around going guilty 24 hours a day.
Guilt.
Yes.
And it's important that our caregivers know that it's okay to ask for other supports, more informal supports too. Whether it's a neighbor popping by to check on a loved one, if that's possible, extending your social web friends, family members, anyone who could offer a lending hand. Be ready to say, you can help, great. Could you, and fill in the blank. So often we just thank the person offering their help, thank them for offering it, and then we let it go. But be prepared, be armed and ready to say, great, could you run to the store for me? Could you pick up mom? Could you, give them a task or some way that they could help out?
You know what, sometimes I would have even been thankful to have somebody just drop over and talk to me while I was with mom.
Absolutely.
Because when you're dealing with someone with a chronic illness or dementia, Alzheimer's, any of those things, there's a lot of hours to fill. So it's always nice to have a third party.
Yeah, and you're not, excuse me, and you're not alone out there. You need to talk, open up,
And if an adult decides to have their loved one go to adult day services, what types of activities and supports are available for the aging loved one at adult day?
There's quite a few programs through the Office on Aging. If someone comes to the adult daycare center, the one thing, there's socialization. We do field trips and lunch outs. They make friends. We have an entertainment that comes into the center. We also have nurses on staff if they need their monitors, their medication monitored, any health problems. So, and they're in a safe, secure environment. And that way the caregiver can relax, go to work, and feel comfortable.
Now with ValleyCare specifically, Does your loved one have to go every day of the week, every work day? What kind of rules, restrictions are
No,
there?
they don't. We have some of our clients that attend 5 days a week. Some are there 1 or 2 days a week. We also offer partial days.
Okay.
So they can attend as many days as they would like. We highly recommend more than 1 day a week. That way they get accustomed to coming.
And build the relationships. Like you said,
Correct.
socialization is important.
Correct, yes.
Wonderful. What I did when my mom was a caregiver, I didn't even know about these types of services in our community. So shows like this are a
Well,
wonderful
I
way.
didn't either, and, you know, one
Yeah.
of the services, my brothers couldn't bathe my mother, and there are situations where it's a husband or a son or something, and that's huge to them.
Absolutely.
And there's still so many people out there that's not aware of the services.
I think another service which many people are either not aware of or misconception of is hospice. Hospice is a wonderful agency, and there are so many different hospice agencies available now. And you know, if you think that your loved one, it's time for hospice, they can come into your home, or they can go into a facility, or sometimes they have outpatient or patient facilities for hospice, and they provide bathing, as you were mentioning, nursing care, social workers, even equipment, medical equipment is all provided through Medicare. Now, you need to be able, the person needs to be assessed to be sure that they qualify, but I think a lot of people think hospice is only for people that have cancer
Correct.
or
Well, I
people
thought-
who are
Yes.
going to die within 2 weeks.
See, that's what I thought
And
when
it's not
with my
true.
mother. So it really, how far out, Lois, can you go? Because I thought with my mother it had to be end of life.
It depends on the person. They definitely need to be assessed by a hospice agency. A doctor needs to request that they be assessed. But it just depends. Some people are in hospice for years.
Oh,
Some
wow.
people are on hospice and get better, and
I
then
would've
they're off
never-
of
They're off
hospice.
of
I would
it.
have never thought that.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. What a tremendous service that
Yeah, because
offers.
when the
really
word
is.
hospice comes up, most of us just
Dying.
think of end of life.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And with the Area Agency on Aging, there's a wealth of resources and supports available to caregivers and care receivers. Your aging loved ones can benefit from having a care manager to help you navigate the system. But if for any information on county-wide services, you need to call Senior Line, which is area code 412-350-5460. And we'll make sure you have the information for ValleyCare, the Alzheimer's Association, and Area Agency on Aging that will be available to you at the end of the show. Let's talk about for a moment the stress that you have as a caregiver and possible ways that we can help the caregivers out there relieve the stress that they are experiencing today. Were there any techniques that you developed, Debbie, while you were a caregiver?
Well, evidently I probably wasn't real good at them. That's why I had a heart attack. But after that, it made me smarter. That, you know, instead of when somebody that was scheduled to come up and sit with Mom didn't make it, it wasn't like, all right, I'll take it. You pick up the phone and you say, okay, you know, this one can't come. I need you to fill in here. I had to learn that I can't carry it all on my shoulders. The majority of the work was done in my mom's home, and we felt comfortable there, but it had to be shared.
Great advice.
Yes.
Lois, do you have any advice for caregivers and
Oh.
stress management?
It is just so hard because there's stress in so many different areas, the financial and the emotional, and there's just so many different, I think if you allow yourself to have just 15 minutes a day, whatever, if it's morning, if it's at the evening, whatever, you just start with 15 minutes a day and do something that you like, whether it be a bubble bath or reading a magazine or calling a friend. And then if you can give yourself 20 minutes a day and just try to give yourself any amount of time you can, but every day you are entitled to some portion of that day for yourself.
Well, and I think you have to learn to lower your expectations. You know, I always prided myself in a immaculate home and well-cooked meals and, you know, bringing in money for the family and all that, and you have to sit back and say, okay, what's really important? You know, if I take 15 minutes and sit on a porch, is anybody going to die